We planted the first seed in the dark. It was a simple act. One small ship, one brave crew. They traveled to a place where nothing was, a patch of absolute cold between two distant stars. The ship's long arms reached out. They pushed a single glowing acorn into the emptiness. It was a prayer made of science and hope. The galaxy watched our little venture. Broadcasts carried the image everywhere. They saw the tiny seed pulse with a soft green light. It began to sprout almost instantly. A silver-white root uncurled into the void. A fragile stem reached for non-existent sunlight. We called it Yggdrasil Station 1. It was the beginning of everything. The other races did not understand. Their messages flooded our networks. They were filled with confusion and amusement. Why plant a tree where no tree could grow? Why waste resources on such a useless gesture? We offered no grand explanation. We simply said we liked trees. This answer only deepened their bewilderment. For us, it was enough. The silence that followed was heavy with judgment. They saw us as children playing with dirt. We were sentimental creatures in a universe of cold logic. But as our little tree grew, a few watched with something else. It was not admiration, not yet. It was a quiet, nervous curiosity. Something new had been planted in the old darkness, and it was starting to grow. The laughter came first from the elder ones, beings of pure energy and ancient pride. Their voices echoed from crystal spires on worlds of light. They called us fools. They called us sentimental primates. We had mastered star travel. True. We had built cities in orbit. Also true. But we still clung to our mudball origins. We still dreamed of gardens. Look at the little mammals, a broadcast from the Cygnus cluster declared. The speaker was a being of immense power. They carry their soil and water into the void. They seek to recreate their cradle. It is a pathetic waste of effort. Their words were sharp. They cut deeper than any physical weapon. They were meant to shame us into stopping. We heard them. Every human on every world heard them. We listened to their logical arguments. We listened to their sophisticated scorn. They showed us charts and projections. They demonstrated the sheer inefficiency of our project. A single void tree cost as much as a small warship. A warship could defend a system. A tree, it just floated there. It did nothing. But we did not stop. Their mockery was like wind against a mountain. It howled, and then it was gone. We had our own logic. It was not a logic of circuits or energy signatures. It was the logic of a living heart. The universe was vast and cold and empty. We would make it a little less of all three. We would plant our trees in the vacuum. And so we did. We ignored their scorn and continued our work. The laughter faded into a low hum of disapproval. We launched more ships, not warships. We called them cedars. They were beautiful silver vessels. They moved with a quiet grace through the star lanes. Each one carried a precious cargo. Thousands of engineered acorns, each one ready for the void. Our silent gardens grew between the cold stars. We chose the empty spaces on purpose, the forgotten corners of the galaxy, the dark lanes where pirates and smugglers hid. We planted our groves there. Each one was a small beacon of defiance, a testament to a different kind of power, a power that did not conquer, but created. The groves expanded slowly at first. A dozen trees became 100, 100 became 1,000. From a distance, they looked like faint green smudges, little nebulae of impossible life. Up close, they were breathtaking. Branches of silver wood reached out for light years. Leaves of shimmering emerald caught the starlight. They were forests born in the deep dark. This was a new frontier for humanity. Our explorers were not soldiers or miners. They were gardeners. They wore suits designed for space and for soil. They learned the quiet language of the void trees. They tended to the young saplings. They pruned the ancient branches. Their work was slow and deliberate. It was an act of faith in a faithless universe. These were no ordinary trees. We had designed them for this. They were the culmination of centuries of work. Their bark was a shimmering, metallic substance. It could withstand the hard radiation of space. It could endure the absolute cold. Their roots were not made for soil. They were made to draw energy from the vacuum itself. They were designed to breathe radiation and starlight. Every solar flare was a feast for them. Every passing comet was a source of nourishment. The trees processed the harsh energies of the cosmos. They turned death into life. Their leaves were vast solar sails. They captured photons from suns millions of miles away. This was their food. Inside their trunks flowed a liquid core of pure energy. It pulsed with a soft, internal light. This was the lifeblood of the void forest. It carried power to the furthest branches. It pushed new growth into the endless night. We had woven the laws of star science into their very DNA. They were living machines, and something more. The elder races studied our creations. Their probes drifted silently near our groves. They scanned the trees with every sensor they had. The data they collected made no sense. It broke their models of biology. It defied their understanding of life itself. A plant that breathed hard vacuum? A forest that thrived on gamma rays? It was impossible. Yet there it was, growing. Our forests began to change the vacuum itself. It started subtly. A strange warmth in the space between the trees. Instruments on our tender ships picked it up first. The temperature rose by a few degrees. In the absolute zero of deep space, that was a miracle. It was a pocket of impossible living warmth. Then came the first impossible breath. A sensor alarm screamed on Yggdrasil Station 1. It was not an error. It was not a malfunction. The sensors detected trace amounts of oxygen, free-floating, breathable oxygen, in the middle of a hard vacuum. The gardeners on the station checked their gear. They thought they were going mad. The pocket of atmosphere grew. It clung to the forest like a shroud, a thin, shimmering bubble of life. Within a few years, it was dense enough. A human could stand on a branch of a great tree. They could remove their helmet, and they could breathe. The air was crisp and clean. It smelled faintly of ozone and fresh soil. This changed everything. Our groves were no longer just symbolic gestures. They were becoming habitats, small islands of life in the great cosmic ocean. We began to build small outposts in the branches, homes made of living wood and clear diamond, places for people to live and work, to raise families among the stars, not in cold metal stations, but in a forest. A strange energy connected our star-born groves. We noticed it first as a flicker in our instruments, a low-frequency hum that had no source. It seemed to come from the trees themselves. It pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm, like a great, sleeping heart. The sound was too low for human ears to hear, but we could feel it in our bones. The trees seemed to hum a quiet, vital song. The energy flowed between the separate forests. It crossed the vast, empty distances. It created a network of invisible light, a web of life strung across the darkness. We studied this energy, this song. We could not understand its purpose, but we knew it was important. Our gardeners reported strange feelings, a sense of peace, of connection. When they worked among the trees, they felt it, a whisper in the back of their minds. It was not a voice made of words. It was a feeling of wellness, a sense of belonging to something vast and old. The trees were speaking to them. The song grew stronger as the forests grew larger. It began to have physical effects. The pockets of atmosphere stabilized. The warmth spread further into the void. The trees themselves grew faster, healthier. It was as if they were drawing strength from each other, sharing life across the light years. The galaxy was no longer silent. It was filled with the whispering of leaves. A great, ancient race came to observe us. It was the Elder Ones, the same beings who had laughed at us. They came in a single, massive vessel, a ship the size of a small moon. It was made of a material that drank the light, a perfect, silent sphere of black. It hung at the edge of our oldest forest, Yggdrasil. They did not speak to us at first. They simply watched. Their powerful sensors scanned our work. They measured the warmth. They tasted the impossible air. They listened to the song of the trees. Our living project was an anomaly they could not solve. It was a puzzle that defied their ancient wisdom. Their laughter had long since died. Finally, they sent a message. It was not filled with scorn this time. It was filled with a cold, reluctant curiosity. "Explain your purpose," the voice commanded. It was the same voice that had called us fools. It held no warmth, no respect. But the amusement was gone, replaced by something else, something that felt almost like concern. We gave them the same answer as before. "We like trees." This time they did not laugh. They fell silent. The great black sphere remained for weeks. It moved slowly around the forest, a predator studying a creature it could not understand. We knew they were not a threat to us, not directly. They were too advanced for simple violence, but their gaze was heavy, a weight on our souls. They were waiting for us to fail. A new darkness fell upon the star lanes. It began at the galactic rim. A sensor outpost in a distant, forgotten sector went silent. No distress call, no final data burst. Just nothing. A fleet was sent to investigate. It was a small patrol from one of the elder races, a fast, powerful ship. It arrived at the outpost's last known coordinates, and then it too went silent. More ships vanished, worlds and fleets began to disappear without a trace. It was a creeping silence that spread from the edge of the galaxy. It moved slowly, patiently inward. At first, the great powers were not concerned. Space is vast. Ships are lost all the time. But the pattern became undeniable. The silence was spreading, and it was hungry. The disappearances were absolute. There was no wreckage, no debris fields, no lingering energy signatures. One moment, a thriving colony of billions existed. The next, there was only empty space, as if the colony had never been there at all. The stars themselves seemed colder in these regions, dimmer. The darkness was not just an absence of light. It was an absence of everything. Panic began to set in. The elder races convened an emergency council. They pooled their vast knowledge. They searched their ancient archives. They found nothing like this. It was a foe they had never encountered, a weapon they could not comprehend, a strategy they could not counter. The galaxy held its breath. The silence from the rim was getting louder. We called it the Blight, a plague of nothingness. It finally revealed itself at the edge of the Perseus arm. A sensor drone captured the only existing images, a vast, amorphous cloud of perfect black. It was not a shadow. It was a hole in reality, a patch of anti-space that consumed everything it touched. Stars, planets, ships, a life. The weapons of the elders were utterly useless against it. They threw everything they had at the advancing cloud. Matter disruptors that could shatter moons, energy beams that could ignite suns. They warped space and time around it. Nothing worked. Their weapons passed through the blight as if it were not there. The cloud did not even seem to notice. It just kept coming. The blight was not a force. It was an absence, a negation of existence. It did not destroy things. It unmade them. It erased them from the universe. The logic of the elder races could not fight it. Their power was based on manipulating reality. The blight simply deleted reality. It was the ultimate, unanswerable argument. Hope began to crumble. The great civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for eons, they were terrified. Their fleets were useless. Their fortress worlds were death traps. They could only run. But the blight was patient. It spread like a stain, slow and inevitable. It was the end of all things. The hungering void had arrived, and nothing could stop it. The blight reached our first deep space forest. It swept over the system where Yggdrasil Station 1 stood. The elder races watched on their long-range sensors. They expected our little garden to be erased instantly. Another foolish, sentimental project, consumed by the inevitable dark. They watched, and they waited for the green smudge to vanish. But it did not vanish. The blight flowed around the edge of the forest, like water flowing around a stone in a stream. The darkness touched the outer branches. It touched the leaves of emerald light. And it stopped. The great, consuming nothingness hesitated. For the first time since its arrival, the blight had met a boundary it could not cross. Life held its ground against the great emptiness. The trees at the edge of the forest did not wither. They did not get unmade. They shone brighter. Their internal light intensified. They pulsed with a defiant, living energy. The pocket of atmosphere around them shimmered. The impossible warmth flared. The forest was fighting back. On Yggdrasil Station 1, our gardeners felt it. The song of the trees changed. The quiet, gentle hum rose in pitch and volume. It became a clear, resonant tone, a note of pure, unyielding life. The station's lights flickered. The very structure of the living woods seemed to harden. The small outpost, once a symbol of sentiment, had become a fortress. The grove that did not break. Our trees sang a hymn of pure life. The low hum we had studied for so long was not just a side effect, it was a weapon. As the blight pressed against the forest, the song intensified. It was no longer a whisper, it was a chorus, a symphony of defiance that pushed back against the silence. The energy web that connected our groves lit up. This song was a weapon the blight could not endure. The nothingness of the blight was an absence of information, an absence of existence. The song of the trees was the opposite. It was pure, complex, living information. It was the frantic, beautiful chaos of biology. The two forces met at the edge of the forest, and the silence broke. The blight recoiled. It pulled back from the shimmering leaves. The perfect blackness seemed to fray at the edges where it touched the song. The unmaking void could not unmake something that was so profoundly, stubbornly real. The life energy of the forest was an anchor, a point of absolute existence that the negation could not erase. We watched from our command centers, stunned. The gardeners on Yggdrasil reported what they felt. The song was pouring out of the trees. It was a physical force. They could feel it vibrating through the wooden decks. It filled the air with a pressure that was not uncomfortable. It was reassuring. It was the feeling of life itself pushing back against the dark. We realized our forests were the only shield. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the blight retreated from Yggdrasil. The ancient races reran their simulations. They analyzed the data from the encounter. The conclusion was impossible, but inescapable. Our sentimental little gardens were the only things that could stop the end of the universe. Humanity's great and terrible hope was born in that moment. We had the weapon, the only weapon, but it was not enough. Our groves were scattered islands in a vast, dark ocean. The blight was still advancing everywhere else. It simply flowed around our small pockets of life. We needed more than islands. We needed a wall. The plan was audacious. It was terrifying. We had to connect them all. We had to amplify the song. We had to weave every single void forest into a single galactic network. A barrier of life that would span from the core to the rim. It would take everything we had, every ship, every resource, every last ounce of our will. Messages flooded our networks. This time, they were not of scorn or curiosity. They were pleas for help. The elder ones, the proud warrior clans, the machine intelligences. All of them came to us. They offered their fleets, their technology, their ancient knowledge. They, who had called us fools, now called us their only hope. Our great and terrible responsibility had arrived. The final battle was not fought with warships. The great fleets of the elder races stood silent vigil. They formed a protective cordon around our work. They guarded the cedar ships as they raced between the groves. They defended the gardeners who worked tirelessly to strengthen the network. The fate of the galaxy rested not on cannons, but on branches and leaves. The heart of the battle was in our first garden. Yggdrasil Station 1 became the command center for the entire operation. From here, we would activate the network. We would turn the gentle song of the trees into a roar of defiance. The blight sensed the change. The great cloud of nothingness stopped its advance. It began to coalesce, to gather its strength. It turned its full attention towards our oldest forest. We worked to connect the final nodes. Our gardeners in their armored suits moved through the glowing branches. They laid conduits of living energy. They anchored the network to the heartwood of the oldest trees. The song grew louder with each connection, a deep, resonant hum that could be felt in every human settlement. It was the pulse of our combined hope. The moment came. All connections were made. The network was complete. From the bridge of Yggdrasil Station 1, the command was given, not with a button or a switch, but with a thought, a shared intention from every gardener in the network, a single, focused will. Fire the song. The final battle was fought in the quiet heart of our garden. The network fired a great wave of life. It started as a single pulse from the heart of Yggdrasil, a wave of pure, green energy. It surged through the invisible web connecting the forests. Every tree in the galaxy lit up at once. The song became a single, perfect chord, a note of creation so powerful it shook the fabric of space itself. The wave of life rolled outwards from our network of groves. It was not a destructive force. It was a creative one. Where it passed, the silence was broken. The emptiness was filled. The blight, the great nothingness, could not exist in its presence. It dissolved. It evaporated like mist in the morning sun. The unmaking was unmade. We watched as the wave cleansed the star lanes. The regions that had gone dark, they flared with new light. It was not the light of stars being reborn. It was something new. A soft, green luminescence that painted the void. The scarred and erased sections of the galaxy were transformed. They became a vast, sprawling nebula of life energy. The dawn of a green nebula. The wave washed over the fleets of the elder races. It passed through their ships without harm. Their sensors went wild with impossible readings. Their ancient commanders stood on their bridges and wept. They were witnessing the birth of a new kind of cosmos, one not of cold fire and empty space, but of warmth and life and a quiet, ever-present song. They no longer called us foolish primitives. After the blight was gone, the galaxy was changed forever. The Green Nebula, as it came to be known, was a permanent feature of the sky, a constant reminder of what had happened, a testament to the power of a simple, sentimental idea. And our place in the galaxy changed with it. We became the galaxy's most valued tenders of life. The elder races came to us not with demands, but with requests. They asked us to teach them, to share our knowledge of the living wood. They wanted to plant their own trees, to help expand the great forest. Their pride was gone, replaced by a deep and profound respect. Some might even call it awe. We did not become conquerors. We did not become rulers. That was never our way. We remained what we had always been, gardeners. We tended to the Green Nebula. We helped new life take root in the newborn gardens. We taught the children of ancient star empires how to hold a seedling, how to feel the quiet song in their own hearts. The laughter was a distant memory. The scorn was forgotten. Now, when the ships of the elder races passed a human vessel, they would dip their bows in a gesture of salute, a sign of respect for the stubborn, sentimental mammals, the ones who had looked at the vast, cold emptiness of the universe and decided to plant a tree.